My fiancé cheated on me with her ex at our engagement party. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, unable to move. My brain was screaming at me, telling me to go back inside and act like everything was normal, but my feet were glued to the ground. I watched in utter shock as Jenna, the woman I thought I knew, was kissing someone else. It felt like time slowed down, every second stretching longer as the reality of what I was witnessing set in. I couldn't believe my eyes. This wasn't some random guy either. I could see it now, his face, the way he held her, the familiarity in the way they touched. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't some random fling. No, this was something deep, something they had built long before I even came into the picture. And then, just like that, it hit me. It was her ex. I didn't know much about her past relationships. She'd told me bits and pieces over the years, but nothing that made me think her ex still had a place in her life, especially not at our engagement party. Yet here he was, standing right in front of me, holding her like he never let go. My heart started pounding harder, my chest tightening. This was my moment, the moment I was supposed to share with her, the woman I loved, surrounded by friends and family who had supported us. And here she was, sneaking around behind my back with the one guy who should have been in her past, not her present. It felt like the ground beneath me was slipping away, like I was losing everything in the blink of an eye. I wanted to confront them. I wanted to storm over there and yell at them, demand answers. But I couldn't. Not yet. I was still too stunned, still too shocked to even think straight. I needed to process this, to make sure I wasn't just imagining it, because the world around me was spinning out of control. This wasn't supposed to happen to me. Not now. Not at this moment in my life. But there they were, wrapped up in each other. She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. She looked happy, lost in the moment with him, as though none of this was a betrayal. As though the promises we had made to each other meant nothing. I turned away, trying to get some space, some air. My mind was racing. Was I wrong to have trusted her? Was I wrong to think that after 3 years, everything was going well? Was I blind to the cracks in our relationship? All those little moments that I had brushed off, the times she had seemed distant or distracted, now came rushing back. All of it pointed to this. I felt nauseous, betrayed. I couldn't stay there any longer. Without a second thought, I turned and walked toward the parking lot, my legs carrying me with a mind of their own. I needed to get away, to clear my head, to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do next. The engagement party was ruined. Hell, everything was ruined. I couldn't even look at her anymore without seeing them together, without hearing her whispering those words to him. "I've missed you so much." As I stepped outside into the cool night air, I heard the sound of footsteps behind me. I turned, and there she was, Jenna, running after me, breathless. She called my name, her voice shaking. "Please, don't go. Let me explain." I could barely look at her. All I saw was the image of her with him, tangled in a web of lies and deceit. "Explain? How do you explain that?" I snapped, my voice trembling with anger and hurt. "Explain why you're cheating on me at our engagement party. Explain why you're still hung up on him." Tears welled up in her eyes, and she reached out to touch my arm, but I stepped back. I couldn't bear it. I couldn't bear her touch right now. "It's not like that, I swear. I made a mistake. It was a moment of weakness. I didn't mean for it to happen." I cut her off. "A mistake? A moment of weakness? Jenna, you're married to me, or at least you're supposed to be. And instead of being with me, You're out here with him, your ex. The guy you always told me you were over. My voice broke as the weight of it all settled in. I can't do this. I can't be here anymore. This isn't the woman I thought I was marrying. This isn't the life I thought we were building. Her face crumpled, and she reached out again, her hands trembling. I'm so sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. I wasn't thinking. I, I just, I needed closure. I never got it from him. But it doesn't mean anything, I swear. You're the one I want. You're the one I love. The words felt hollow. I couldn't trust them anymore. I had seen the truth. Her actions had already spoken louder than anything she could say. You need to go, I said, my voice firm but cracking. I can't look at you right now. You need to leave. Her face turned pale, her lips trembling as she stood there, frozen. She opened her mouth to speak, but I didn't want to hear it. I couldn't. My trust in her had been shattered. What was left to say? The moment was over. My dream of a future with her had crumbled in front of my eyes. She stood there for a long time, just looking at me, like she was trying to figure out where it all went wrong. Finally, without another word, she turned and walked back inside. I stood there, my heart in pieces, wondering how everything had gone so horribly wrong. I stayed outside for a while longer, trying to process what had happened. It felt surreal, like I was in some twisted version of my own life. It was hard to even breathe, let alone think straight. My whole world had just imploded, and I didn't know what to do next. I didn't know if I could forgive her, and I wasn't sure I even wanted to anymore. By the time I made my way back into the venue, the party had lost all its life. The music, the laughter, it all seemed distant, like I was in a dream I couldn't wake up from. I spotted her talking to her ex again, looking remorseful, but I couldn't be around it. Not anymore. I couldn't look at her without feeling like I had been played for a fool. And that's when it hit me. I deserved better. I deserved someone who would never look at another man the way she had looked at him. Someone who would never betray my trust. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for sure: I wasn't going to spend it with someone who had so easily turned their back on me. I turned to leave, not saying a word to anyone, just walking out into the night, carrying the weight of my broken heart. This wasn't the life I had planned, but somehow I knew that I would find a way to move on. The air around me felt suffocating, like I was trapped in a bubble that was slowly closing in. My stomach churned, and I couldn't escape the overwhelming feeling of betrayal that was clawing at my chest. My head was spinning, and my thoughts were jumbled. Who the hell is this guy? The question kept running through my mind, but no answer seemed to make sense. My brain couldn't make sense of what I had just seen. I needed to confront her. I had to know what was going on. I took a hesitant step forward, my legs shaking, but I couldn't stop myself. This was it. I couldn't let it go. I called out her name, my voice barely above a whisper. Jenna, what's going on? Her reaction was immediate, like she had been caught in the act, which, in hindsight, she had. Jenna's body jerked, her face drained of color. She looked like she had just seen a ghost, and when her eyes locked onto mine, the panic in her expression was impossible to miss. Her hands trembled as she tried to pull away from him, but it was too late. I had already seen enough. The guy, the one standing there with my fiancé, was her ex. I froze in disbelief. I had heard about him before, of course. She'd always reassured me time and time again that he was a part of her past, someone who no longer held any significance in her life. She swore she hadn't spoken to him in years, that their relationship was nothing more than a distant memory. Yet here I was, watching them kiss like nothing had changed, as if I wasn't even standing there. The shock hit me harder than a punch to the gut. I stood there, frozen, my eyes wide, my breath coming in shallow gasps. I couldn't process it. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. It was our engagement party. This was supposed to be the happiest day of our lives. How was this happening? How could she do this to me right here, right now, in front of everyone? The guy looked at me, and for a brief second, I saw something in his eyes. Regret? Guilt? I wasn't sure, but he spoke, his voice surprisingly calm considering the situation. Bro, I'm sorry, man. This wasn't supposed to happen. Was he serious? Wasn't supposed to happen? What the hell did that even mean? What exactly had he walked into? Was he under the impression that they were just catching up? What kind of apology was that? As if it wasn't the most devastating thing I could possibly hear at that moment. Jenna, now in a complete panic, was fumbling for words. She tried to explain, to justify her actions, but I couldn't make sense of anything she was saying. Her voice sounded distant, almost muffled, as if I were underwater. She was crying now, her tears falling freely, and she was apologizing over and over again. She kept saying it was a moment of weakness, that it didn't mean anything. But it didn't matter. Nothing, she said, could fix it. The damage had been done. I couldn't listen anymore. My thoughts were racing, my heart pounding in my chest. I felt like I was suffocating. The air around me grew thick, and I could feel the pressure building in my head. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. Without thinking, I turned and walked away, my hands shaking violently. I couldn't stand there any longer. I couldn't look at her, couldn't even look at him. I needed to get out of there. The chaos inside me was threatening to spill over, and I was terrified of what I might say or do. So I did the only thing I could think of. I walked back into the venue, trying to act like nothing was wrong, even though everything was wrong. The rest of the night passed in a blur. I could barely focus on anything. The party continued around me, but it felt like I was in a completely different world. My mind kept replaying the scene over and over again, Jenna and her ex, kissing right in front of me, as if I didn't exist. Every word she had said to me about him, every promise she had made, was now nothing but a lie. The whole situation felt surreal, like a twisted nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The music, the laughter, the conversations, none of it mattered. I was trapped in my own thoughts, drowning in confusion and anger. I wanted to confront her right then and there, but I didn't want to make a scene. I didn't want to be the one to ruin the party for everyone else, even though my world had just crumbled around me. So I kept my mouth shut, pretended everything was fine, and plastered a smile on my face. But inside, I was falling apart. The walls felt like they were closing in on me, and I could feel the pressure building with every passing minute. When the party finally came to an end, I couldn't get out of there fast enough. But I knew I couldn't avoid her. Jenna followed me home, and once we were inside, she tried to explain again. She was still crying, still apologizing, saying how sorry she was, that it was just a mistake. It didn't mean anything, she kept repeating. It was just a moment of weakness. But how could I believe that? How could I ever trust her again? How could I move forward with someone who had done this to me? Who had lied to me for months, telling me that she hadn't spoken to him, only to be caught in the most intimate of moments with him at our engagement party. It felt like my heart was being ripped out of my chest. I wanted to scream, to yell, to ask her how she could have done this. But all I could do was sit there in silence, staring at her, my mind racing with questions I couldn't answer. The thought of going through with this wedding seemed impossible now. How could I marry someone who had betrayed me so completely? How could I spend the rest of my life with a woman who had kissed another man at our engagement party? The trust was shattered, and I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't know if I even wanted to try. I could still see it, the image of her and him, so close, so familiar with each other. The way they kissed, the way he looked at her. It was like I wasn't even there. And no matter how many times she apologized, no matter how many tears she shed, I couldn't forget what I had seen. The worst part was knowing that this wasn't just some mistake. This was something deep, something that had been festering underneath the surface for who knows how long. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know if I could move past this. I didn't know if I could ever look at her the same way again. How could I? How could I trust her when everything she had told me was a lie? How could I marry her after everything that had happened? I was lost. I was broken. And I didn't know where to go from here. This wasn't just a moment of weakness. This was something deeper. Something I couldn't ignore. And now I had to figure out what I was going to do about it.